Welcome to the Touchlines and Touchdowns video blog thing. We don't have time for my bullshit today. We're recording live. We are doing this video at halftime of the NCAA National Championship game, a game that is over because Brady Manick is good at shooting threes. But we're not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about outside runs.
Another game, yeah.
A different type of college sport, although pro sport as well. As always, who are we? We are not joined by my co-host, Greg. He was a cheerleader. I'm joined by Coach Mike, played tight end at Michigan. When he was playing, outside runs went to him because he was good at blocking usually. And obviously we have Coach Josh, a corner defensive back who outside runs targeted. And that is because cornerbacks are, smaller than offensive linemen. How's everybody doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good.
Pretty good.
I'm good. I found a hat that I thought I'd lost. It's an FC Porto hat because it was $5.
Big Porto fan?
Oh, yeah, huge. All right. Reminders, get basics. We go over this in all running plays because it's important. We're going to go over it in all defensive stuff because it's important. But basically, when we talk about outside runs, we're talking C, D, and outside. Any thoughts, Mike?
Nope. So inside run, between the tackles, outside run, outside the tackles.
So when they say running outside the tackles, they mean that right tackle, that left tackle, LT, RT, pretty basic stuff. The responsibility for this, we're going to get into this in the defensive set. But basically, the idea is on an outside run, the responsibilities are not always so focused on your bigger guys. The responsibilities start getting into your smaller guys. So we'll talk about alleys. We'll talk about fill. We'll talk about spilling and all that sorts of stuff. But for right now, what we need to know is when you're running the ball outside, you mean to go outside of the tackles. So, yep. Reminder once again, Mike, you wanna break this down real quick?
So again, I guess if we're thinking about zone blocking, it's different than your traditional gap blocking. Like if you're running something like power, you have an idea as an offensive lineman of where you want to take your defensive player. You have like a certain task. With zone blocking, it's a little bit different. You're on a track moving in a certain direction, and one of our coaches would always say, like, take your defender wherever he wants to go. If you end up like locking onto somebody and he wants to stay inside, take him there. If he wants to like continue to work outside to set the edge, you can take him there. You're looking for movement, and this movement creates gaps where hopefully your offense or your running back ends up seeing it and hitting big plays. So
Coach Josh, when you see zone blocking from a defensive perspective, like Mike was saying, or as opposed to gap blocking, so like what was a way that you tried to beat a zone block?
Usually on zone blocks, like as a corner, I didn't really see a whole lot of zone blocks, but I'll tell you from like a safety perspective because I played a little bit of safety as well, and whenever I was lined up like in like down like in the linebacker space or like in the box, in zone blocks, you defensively you always have like every gap has to be covered by in a defense. So whichever way the zone block or the play is flowing, your gap assignment, and it's your job to make sure that your gap isn't like you're not blocked or pushed out of your gap. And so in zone block schemes, defensively, you just want to make sure that one, you don't like overrun the play to where you're blocked out of it, and then you make sure you maintain gap integrity, so you basically get into your gap and make sure that the play bounces either outside or cuts back into your
you don't want to be the reason
the
as to why the offense has a big gain. So you want to point to someone else on film and say, hey,
I did my job.
Davis,
Exactly.
Davis over here is the one.
Exactly.
It's always
Yeah.
Davis.
Always Davis.
Okay, so let's talk about outside zone. So I unfortunately couldn't find one um, from LA because but the Rams used outside zone to get to the Super Bowl because NFL defense forgot how to block it. It was a very funny thing that happened. Sean McVay was considered a genius because he ran outside zone and delayed and play action, and people were like, how do you do this? And it's just because, like we talked about, the NFL is really bad at remembering how to defend things. Like, they're really good at counters. They're really bad at like base. So Mike, this shows also like some of the other options that a running back has, but obviously like the idea is that he's going to get outside, right?
Yeah, that's your primary track that the running backs will start on. So 24, the running back there, he's gonna, like where it says press the hole, like this is an outside zone, so hitting that arrow's pointing outside of that left tackle. So that's where he's initially going to go, where his track starts. Again, as bodies start to move and shake and shift as the run begins, he might have a cutback, which is part of that yellow line that says run to daylight. If you see something open up, even if it might be on a different track than what you're thinking of, that's where the concept of having vision comes in from a running back. It's really easy to put your blinders on and say, hey, I was supposed to run, to the D gap, and that's where I went. Well, if everything's walled off there, you need to be able to adjust and adapt. So, and even though it's an outside zone, it doesn't mean that the ball 100% goes outside, without a cutback happening.
Yeah, so this is a good time to point out here. Like, you'll see plays look like this, the right-sided pick, where it's like, yep, running back goes outside. But almost no plays in American football are like you have one option and you must subscribe and conform to that option. Because if so, like Usain Bolt would be an NFL All-Pro running back, right? It's a lot of it is, and people talk about this with Le'Veon Bell all the time about his patience and his vision, right? They always talk about like running back vision. What they mean is precisely what Mike was talking about pressing the hole, figuring out where the actual gap is, and sort of hitting that gap hard that you have been pressing.
Real quick, is this the play that I think it is? The picture with the Seahawks and the Saints?
It's the second one, yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. I just recognized like that formation and I was like, I think I know what that is.
Because it's 12. Or yeah, it's a true, like, you almost never see 12 in the pros, but that is true 12. Remember, dear listener, 12 means one running back,
two tight ends,
which we love, right, Mike?
That's right.
And of course, gifts don't work. Whatever. This was going to be an outside zone. He was going to go here and then there, and it was going to be great, and we were going to talk about it. Anyways, so this is jet sweep. This is this was supposed to be a moving image, but this is important. So everybody in the pros now runs this. Mike, you want to explain it? Did you guys run a ton of jet?
We had some people who did it, yeah. So essentially, it's just a way to get a way. All of this again is like to keep the defense guessing, right? So like again, instead of having strength and power be your primary mechanism that you use to like defend the run, from like a man blocking scheme, like inside zone or inside run game, this outside zone you're relying upon like speed and athleticism. So also kind of like anytime that you can throw a wrinkle in to make the defense off guard, that's sometimes what happens with something like jet sweep, where you have a wide receiver come in motion, or even at the snap of the ball, depending on how close their alignment is. And they're the ones who ends up essentially being the ball carrier. So you can pick up an extra blocker for if your running back is, instead of the one who has the ball, a receiver does. They also get added into the blocking mix. So it's kind of just another way. Again, this is a very outside kind of target, more so than any of the outside zones that we would see like from a running back hit. So it's just a different way to get different players involved and kind of keep the defense on their toes.
But it's the same thing in terms of like the blocking scheme. Like from a blocking perspective, it's the same thing.
Yeah, your rules, a lot of them will all stay the same. Not much really ends up changing. It's the same concept. You're just trying to get to that same concept with a different kind of window dressing before the snap, again, to keep the defense kind of on their toes and guessing as to what's going to happen.
I just looked at this defensive alignment, and I think it's a 3-5 because I think they have the nickel listed as a backer, and I assume that this is really the boundary safety.
Yeah, basically the strong safety playing down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so you'll see a lot of this if you want to sound smart at parties. Again, like jet motion simply means a wide receiver is running across the formation. A sweep is when they get the ball. Sometimes you'll hear somebody say something like a pop pass. That's just a jet sweep with some added stupidity. Because, I mean, honestly, if you want to get into the history of it, it's because Clemson couldn't figure it out, and West Virginia ran it 15 times in a game and scored 70 points. It's a true story. Look it up. It's the reason why Tavon Austin continues to get paid. So this is power again. So the reason I bring it up is because power is everything at all times to everybody. And if this running back decides that he's not going to point at the B gap and wants to point at C gap, he can. Sometimes power is aimed at the C gap. Very rarely at the D, but I need to stop saying D. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess it's a way that you get like runs can end up outside. Again, I guess it comes back to not being a robot and going exactly where you think you needed to go before the snap of the ball. You kind of read and react, and run to green grass is kind of the concept. So,
and so like that's something I actually want to like sort of like touch base on a little bit. And I know we're sort of running up against the time limit here because I think halftime's 15 minutes. Is that a lot when we say inside runs, outside runs, a lot of what we're talking about is like the idea, but oftentimes if a defense is, for example, scouted outside zone, it'll look like an inside zone because that running back will see a ton of immediate flow and put their foot in the ground and get north-south. So like, for example, this GIF doesn't work, but if they were running outside
one
zone,
of these weeks we'll get it straightened
figure
out.
It out. Whatever.
Yeah.
So if this were outside zone, you'd be going this way. If the Mike linebacker and the strong side linebacker flow really quickly to the outside, this running back puts his foot in the dirt right here and has all of this space behind 52 to run.
I hate to burst your bubble, but your cursor doesn't even show up.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. My cursor doesn't even show up. Great.
Yep.
Anyways, the point is that with outside zone, with power, with inside zone, you'll see running backs sort of press the middle of the line, and then everybody's collapsed, and suddenly there's a ton of room on the outside. So the point is that whenever you say, we've broken these down by play types, but again, anything can be inside or outside depending on how the defense plays it. This is something that I want to bring up because we talked about power as a backside guard or backside lineman pulling around. And this is a fun little thing that smart teams, including the University of Michigan, run a ton of, which is Playside Pulling. So Mike, why don't you explain this from your alma mater?
Yeah, so we actually even ran this back when I was there, and I think it was my ability to block. This was one of the reasons why I actually played as much as I did. So we had very athletic tackles when I was there. Taylor Lewan, who's so I guess the guys that I played with are still in the NFL. Taylor Lewan, Michael Schofield. Michael ended up actually moving to guard, but both of them were very athletic. So again, getting them out on the perimeter, they're both like over 300 pounds, and they're coming then at poor little secondary players,
Josh-sized people.
So they have the agility themselves to to not just look like they're total like I don't know cows running around out there. So it's a way to essentially get like a numbers game. And again, it's one of those things where you have to essentially come up with different ways that you're going to run the ball to keep the defense guessing. This was a way for us, again, it all depends upon like the defensive alignment as to like who would be pulling, if it would be the play side tackle in the center, or like in the diagram here, it's, the play side guard in the center that are both able to get out. So it's a way, if you have a tight end that's able to set the edge and kind of wash things down. If you have an end that's lined up inside of you, they probably aren't expecting, if they're reading the tackle kind of starts high and moves outside. So the defensive end will go to track with him. And that's when, as a tight end, you blocking down, like you can really pin them pretty easily. So it's one of the things where it kind of throw off the defender's cues or their reads as well. So when it works, it looks pretty cool. Again, unless you really are watching closely, it might be tough to tell kind of where these pullers came from, like if it was a power scheme versus pin and pull.
But of course, a lot of it has to do with some of the same ideas. And I want to bring something up, and then we're gonna go to Josh to figure out sort of how you, like, as a nickel or as a safety or as a corner, like how do you deal with 350 pounds or 320 pounds sort of rumbling at you. But the danger of this, and the reason why not everybody runs this is, as you can see in this diagram, the nose, that N right there, is shaded inside of the backside guard. Occasionally that guy is Aaron Donald. And when you give him an advantage in which the center here is running away from him, occasionally that nose will simply ruin your play. He will shoot that gap really quickly, and you will have play side offensive linemen blocking linebackers or corners or safeties, and then looking back and starting to yell. So Josh, like, when this happens, these types of schemes where you have, not your normal blocky catchy types, your fullbacks and your tight ends, but you have like actual offensive linemen like bearing down on you.
Yeah. So as usually it'll be, like you said, either the nickel, or if depending on the formation, if the strong safety is down in the box area, it'll be a strong safety. And when you have large offensive linemen pulling towards you and you see them, it, in your mind, it's like fight or flight, because like it's either you're going to use your speed and athleticism to beat them to the target point, and then maybe you might be lucky enough to like set the edge, because that's ideally what you want to do. You want to keep the play from going outside of you. And so you set the edge by basically like closing down the amount of space the offensive lineman can build up before they get to you, and then making it a smaller hole for the running back to run through, and then allowing your other defensive players to run through and make it. Either way, you're not making that play. You're sacrificing your body for their team, and it's gonna hurt. But you got to do what you got to do. So it's
hope you have your brown pants on too when you see someone coming at you like that. So
yeah, because especially at the college and the NFL level, those guys are athletic, so they're moving fast and they're huge, and so like there's a little bit of fear that creeps in, but you got to just look past that and just barrel your head down.
Did y'all see that high school kid who's like 6'5"? He's a 5-star like defensive end or defensive tackle. He was like
run a 10-3.
Yeah, he was like 6'5", like what, like 240?
Yeah, 235 or something like that. Yeah,
ran a 10-3. For those of you who are paying attention, the world record on the 100 is like 9.6.
So just for context, I was 5'10", 5'11", $160, and my fastest time in high school was a 10.7 at 160 pounds, and a 10.7 is actually pretty fast. He ran a 10.3 at 235 pounds. That is insane.
Yeah, that's wild.
And it's like I don't even know that you put that person at defensive end. Like part of me thinks like, I mean, shoot, yeah, why not? I mean, like I was thinking, like play him at tight end and at that like I mean, really like that Dax Hill, Jabril Peppers ish thing where you're like, I don't know, just
And
go
Isaiah
be
Simmons.
somewhere.
Isaiah Simmons. That's
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, just like I don't know, just go be fast and big. like because at the defensive end spot, like yeah, like you can do a lot of damage, but like if you're Tyrann Mathieu but 50 pounds heavier, like you know.
Right.
I
So
think
The offensive thing makes you wonder, if he has hands or not. You
Yeah.
know, if that always enters in, and it's a pretty distinct. There's people who like play defense that can catch footballs, and then there's definitely a lot of people who can't. And like just even like everything else that they do on a football field looks athletic and fluid, but then like a football's coming at them. And it looks like they've never played the game before when they go to catch it. And,
it's forever. I will remember in college, Earl Thomas, all pro for the Ravens. I mean, absolutely one of the best defensive backs of our generation. People forget this, but the play before the Michael Crabtree touchdown in that Texas Tech University of Texas game that everybody remembers, Earl Thomas had an interception bounce off his chest. And he puts his head down and hits the ground. And if I remember correctly, I was at a friend of the pod, Nico's older brother's house. And I looked at someone and I said, Texas Tech is scoring on this next play because there are rules. And the football gods don't like that.
Yeah. And so it happened.
And so it happened. So we are running out of time. Basketball is coming back as we speak. So this is toss. So people say toss. What they mean is they simply mean that the quarterback is throwing the ball backwards usually to a running back. Each of these are different ways to play it. You can see on the left that's what we just talked about, a pin and pull. And then you can see one of them. It looks more like an inside zone or an outside zone. Those both are inside or outside zone. My bad. LSU runs a toss dive, which is super weird, and they're the only people who run it with any sort of consistency. But toss just it doesn't change the blocking scheme.
Instead of handing the ball off, you're tossing it backwards.
Yeah, and it's simply to get give the running back more of a head start. So there's not all that much interesting from a blocking perspective. From a running it perspective, it gives the running back a head start, but it also widens his path. So he doesn't get to the point where he can turn as quickly, which makes it somewhat more of a risk.
A lot less cutbacks.
Yeah, you're not going to cut the ball back. This is an example of a jet sweep that went for a touchdown. You can tell because it was against the Lions. And we can't have nice things. But speaking of people who can't have nice things, Kansas is currently down by 13, which if this were football would be much more normal, but it's not. Anyways, so we will be back in a couple weeks to talk about RPOs and options. And wait, I think we're talking about RPOs. We're certainly talking about options, but for what an RPO is, keep this image in mind because this play is clearly an RPO, as you can see from the backside of the play. So, dear listeners, please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, tell your local coach, I guess, and let us know in the chat or wherever you're listening, to this on Twitter or Discord or wherever it is. If you want to know specific things, like if you have a play that you want to know why it worked or didn't work, just let us know. We're happy to break it down. So for Coach Mike and Coach Josh, I guess go Heels, rock chalk.
Go Heels. Yeah.
All right.
I have no